Mike's on Mike, a conversation about politics, government, and Jacksonville, with 50-year opinion leaders Mike Hightower, Mike Tolbert, and award-winning broadcaster and longtime political observer Mike Miller.
Welcome once again to another episode of Mike's on Mike. Nice to have you with us. We're all here today. We've got Mike Hightower, we've got Mike Tolbert, and we got our sponsor, Bliss, from the Jacksonville Historical Society. It's a very special day for us. This is our 52nd episode, so we're drawing to a close our first year of podcasts, and we're just delighted to have gotten to this place, and that's how I'm going to begin. Did you guys ever think we would get a full year in here?
I had my doubts. I mean, I knew that just knowing us that we had enough collective history to know what we were talking about a little bit, and I thought we were current enough on stuff going on.
Yep.
I was concerned that we would like each other and that we could get guests.
Oh, you were concerned that we wouldn't like each other?
I was concerned that we might.
Oh, we might like each other.
Well, there was never a doubt that we wouldn't.
But the fact of the matter is that we've done pretty damn well, and we've had some great guests. I mean, I think that's what's carried us.
Yeah.
You have had some remarkable guests. It's too bad you couldn't come up with more guests whose first name was Mike.
Yeah.
We worked on it. We worked on it. We had a few people. We put an ad in folios and at the post office, and, that's about as far as...
I've heard this show has become so popular that there are people out there who are actually thinking about changing their names to Mike just to have a chance to be on this.
I was thinking that when I sat down.
Well, we were thinking about that for you.
Mike Miller's still smoking his Sendos on that comment.
Not do that.
No, did you think it would work? Yeah. At first I wasn't sure. I mean, Mike and I knew each other for 50 years. So I was really hoping it would work because, for 50 years, he has just ragged on me, and it would give me my time to pay back for hell. But then I was afraid that he wouldn't show any emotion, or he wouldn't have a thought or be concerned about anything. You got to bring him out. That's one of the things about Tolbert. And he's not excitable. And so we were afraid that it would just be really boring. But he helped us out.
He stepped up his game.
He stepped up his game.
And back in December of 2023, when we did show number 22, that's how we started out and saying, this is how the program came about.
Let's talk about how this whole thing got started.
I think that's you.
You think that's me?
That's you.
Well, I can tell you that.
Go ahead.
That you're the one who proposed that we get together and do this. Mike Miller.
So I'm the one to blame.
And Hightower seemed to buy in hook, line, and sinker. And I was kind of apprehensive.
Why were you apprehensive? I never knew that.
Because it was Hightower involved.
Oh, I got you. No. All right, that'll do it. It's been great having you with us. Happy.
I'm contrary to common knowledge, I don't like new things. I'm let's keep it like it is kind of a guy.
Mike is our real curmudgeon on the show.
He really is.
Actually, though, if we look back, it's hard to believe this is our 22nd episode of this thing.
It just doesn't seem possible.
We had no idea that we would even get along. We had no idea. Well, we knew you were very articulate because of your radio experience.
Right.
But we had no idea that either one of us could communicate in this kind of a venue.
And we have validated that we're not.
And I think the amateurish quality of the three of us comes across very well, don't you? And it's kind of endearing.
I will remind you that I think it was you, Miller, who said, what are our goals? Or maybe you was. Somebody said, what are our goals? And my goal was simply just have fun.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I met my goal.
To put it bluntly, though, why didn't you guys agree to do this?
Had nothing else going on.
Oh, well. Okay.
But no, you know what? When you get to our age, one of the things that you have that's important is memory.
Yeah.
And to be able to share memories that have some relevance, I think is very important. So I think what we've been able to do is sort of create a cake here where we have a lot of memories. But it actually been a part of a witness history that we have to share. And then we know enough about what's going on currently sometimes relate those and get people to talk to us.
Yeah, and I think the other thing was, and I think Mike Miller, you brought it up. There aren't many folks out there that are doing this, and with all due respect, we're all curmudgeons. We're sort of reached that point in life that I think we kind of say what we want, and everybody's pretty much said what they're going to say about us anyway. So it sort of gives us the freedom to do that.
Yeah.
But on a serious note, the fact was that Alan, you and the Historical Society wanted to do it. I think it was a challenge and an honor, and we weren't sure. As you know, as you watched us, we were sort of doing this as we went along. We were sort of not only building the train, we were laying the tracks at the same time. We periodically went off the tracks. Oh, that was Mr. Tolbert. But when we got back on track, but it became fun. And I think to Mike, what Tolbert said was the guests that we had at the time. But the other part was there was a lot going on in Jacksonville that a lot of us individually or collectively could relate to, given, as Mike said, we've got 50 years experience here. So, why the faces may change, some of the issues or the environment didn't. So,
well, I remember you guys saying that you'll go. I said, "How long are we going to do this?" And you said, "As long as I'm having fun, I'll go for as long as we can go."
Yeah, because that's really what Mike Tolbert said when we said, "What's our goal?" He said, "To have fun." Yeah. And it's evolved into that, and it's been fun watching our friendship develop. I mean, we've known each other. We never knew each other collectively like this. And as we said, there was no script. So Mike and I have known each other for more than 50 years. I've gotten to know Mike Miller as a neighbor. And it just, as Mike Tolbert said, it sort of evolved into friendship, and it's just evolved something neat. And the fact we're friends.
So this is important.
So it was at this table about a year ago, I guess, that I first learned about this project from Mike Tolbert. Mike and I had begun a series of oral history interviews, and which rises out of what Mike just said. He's at a point, you guys are at a point where you've accumulated a lot of memories, a lot of experiences, and you are all at the point where you've got a lot to share. You've got a lot that is accessible to you in terms of memory. You are lucid but rich with experiences. And I wanted to start getting that from Mike Tolbert. And then in the course of conversation, he casually dropped in, "This is the idea of this project." And I, without knowing how you were going to execute on it, I instinctively realized that this was something that was potentially pretty high value. And I just impulsively said, "Boy, I wish there was some way that, the Historical Society could be a part of helping with that." And Mike, ever the opportunist, said, "Well, I'm sure we can find something."
Work this out.
We can work that out.
We worked it out. Well, it did not take a genius to recognize then, and especially knowing it now, that if you guys partnered with us, it kind of gave us some instant credibility.
Yeah.
And so that was important to me, and it gave us a place. You gave us a place, but to collect money from people who want to support us and put it into the nonprofit, and then help us put on our show each week. So it's been a grand partnership.
The part of the value of this, aside from the value of the content for the listening audience, the people who have subscribed to the podcast series and the people we don't even know about who listen to it and watch it. Part of the value beyond all of that, which is obvious on the face of it, is that you are building a archive, a collection, a resource for the people, the years, the decades, the generations to come. I know that's not uppermost in your mind as you're talking through the issues of the moment, but last night I listened to the last week's project, the podcast with Darnell Smith.
Yeah.
Well done, well conceived, well executed. Darnell, of course, a great Jacksonville citizen, a fascinating set of stories. Mm-hmm. And what an artifact that interview, that recording is going to be 10, 15, 20, 50 years from now.
Well, and I'll give you another example, too, and it was him. When we decided to do the Jazz Festival show with Tolbert, who was the founder, the originator, the producer, going all the way back to pre-Mayport.
Right.
pre-Mayport. I mean, this was such a fountain of information, and you talk about historical contribution to this city, which again is one of the reasons why I targeted Tolbert to be part of this program, is because of that institutional knowledge and history and all of the things that he has brought to this community, besides his association with Jake, which is legendary.
Yeah.
But that's just an example. And then this guy, between the work he had done for Florida Blue, the work he had done at JEA, the knowledge he had of what was going on in Tallahassee, which I know is going...
Work he did is the Republican Party.
And that was the other part. You were going to talk about about Tim Gilmore, I think, as being one of your favorite shows that we have done.
Alan, I found it interesting that over the course of this last year, we've had historians as our guests.
Yeah.
We had Dr. Crooks, Jim Crooks.
Mm-hmm.
We had Dr. Tim Gilmore.
Right.
Dr. Alan Bliss, yourself, Dr. Wingwood.
And then I found it really interesting that Mari Hirayashi of the DuPont Fund, the CEO of the DuPont Fund, when she was on our show talking about the history of the DuPont Foundation, she was full of history about Jacksonville. I don't know how she immersed herself in that much history in such a short period of time. And it's been very interesting to have these historians.
And when you kind of look at each of the guests that we had on there because of your sponsorship, each one of those things, to your point, has given the people who listen to it or watch it or however, something that I didn't know. We walk away because every show, I think each one of us have said, wow, I didn't know that. And each one of those people have said that. So to go back to the archive, each one of those shows, there was an aha moment that we didn't know about, particularly when we had Mike Bender, Dr. Mike Bender on. I mean, Mike and I have good politics. We always sort of thought of, from a political perspective, how Florida was a blue state. We thought it was a purple state. And when I remember he said, "Oh, it's red, paragraph." And I can just remember the expression on our face. We went, "What?" And he went, "It's red."
But those retirees, often they were union folks. They were middle class working folks that had ties to the Democratic Party. That isn't the case anymore. Most of our senior type folks tend to lean much more Republican, and they are coming here in droves, and that's really shifting the makeup. And if you look at the registration in Florida, we used to be a +2, +3D. We're +3 and growing Republican.
Let's talk about some of the guests, right?
Yeah.
I think this is a good point to do it.
All right.
We've had, I made a list here of some of them. David Miller, Mark Lamping, Dr. Bender, Nate Monroe, Mark Woods, and David Berline of the TU, Andrew Pentazzi from the Tributary, Laurie Boyer, Matt Carlucci, Nat Ford, and Darnell Smith.
Wow.
And that's just a sampling.
Yeah.
Every week. And we have not had, to my knowledge, other than Mike Weinstein, anybody turn us down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So here you go.
So I guess the question is, it's not how we were going to ask this question. How do you see the show?
It is a project that has currency in our contemporary moment. And I see that as an asset and a gift and a value. But as I also said, this is something that we're building, you're building for the future, and I'm awfully happy to be a part of that, awfully happy for the Jacksonville History Center to be a part of that. Part of what a local public history organization does is not just collect stories and artifacts and documents and photos, from the deep recesses of the past. We are about collecting the memories, the artifacts, the evidence of Jacksonville in the present. And our oral history project is a great example of that. But Mike's on Mike, I see as really sort of working in tandem with our oral history project and continuing to build out something that's going to be of tremendous value. I'm always thinking about, this sounds a little maybe counterintuitive coming from somebody who's a professional historian, but I'm always thinking about the future. I'm always thinking about the people who are going to come after us, right? And the work that we're doing here with this organization is meant to be a contribution and, frankly, a gift to Jacksonville's future. And if I can carry that thought a little bit further, I would just say that the work of the Jacksonville History Center is, our mission statement is to strengthen citizenship through public history education. And the point of that is to say, how do you expect people to care about the future of a place like Jacksonville if they don't know anything about it?
Mm-hmm.
If they don't know about the people and events of its past. So that's our work. That's the value proposition of what we do. And that project of letting people understand something about this place in the contemporary moment and use that, have that be something that contributes to their sense of investment in its future, that's part of what the Mike's on Mike podcast is doing.
You know, speaking of history, I recall one of our earliest guests was former Sheriff Nat Glover. And he came on to talk about his new book he'd written, and really his incredible life. And in some ways, he was a historian of especially the early years when he was growing up.
When I left that morning, I walked into a mob of Ku Klux Klansmen and white supremacists, and they had axe handles and baseball bats. Now, what was kind of peculiar, I didn't see one person with the old axe handle. They were all brand new. And they quickly encircled me, and they started to hit me. And it was a police officer standing just outside of the circle where I was in the middle, and they were calling me all kind of names other than Nathaniel, and actually hitting me. And so I got an opportunity to run to the officer and ask him, please help me. And he said, you better get out of here before they kill you. And I ran.
You know, one of my favorite guests, and I know it was yours as well, was Michael Krause. We didn't mention him before. He's the outstanding reporter for Politico and wrote that in-depth, insightful, lengthy article, profile, if you will, of Jacksonville's political operative, Susie Wiles, who, according to all reports, is running the presidential campaign. All three of us know Susie. We were all quoted in the article, for better or for worse. And I don't know, Hightower, you've made a point out of how amazed you've been about how many people that we've interviewed and the type of people that we've interviewed up there.
Yeah, I to your point, it was just interesting, the number of people. One, to kind of remember, all of us have a friendship. We've all known Susie. We work with Susie. She's touched our lives.
Not in always good ways.
Yeah, but that's Susie. I mean, from each of us, and I personally, she's helped me more than you'll ever know, and my family. But she's taught us a lot. Now, we didn't always agree with what she was trying to teach us, but she did. But I think the thing that we all were amazed at, one, when we saw the article in Politico, and then realized after talking to Michael Krause that she sat twice with him. And that is so not Susie Wiles. She has always been behind the curtain, all that. And we sort of taught everyone how to be behind the curtain. And it was amazing to us that she sat with him and talked with him and shared so much personal information that a lot of us, one, didn't know or we had heard about, but she was willing to do that. And and to me, that bridges back what you were just saying about the podcast. Here's someone, now we're 3.5 months away from a national election. There's no question that whether President Trump wins or not, the role that Susie Wiles has played in that campaign is going to be historical. And the fact was that the first person to have an in-depth interview with her was on this podcast. First he wrote the article, and then he was on there and he talked about that. So it really kind of goes back to full circle of what you're saying when you talk about the contemporary. Susie Wiles is one of those individuals, and it's right up there, and we had that chance to do it. And for a lot of us, it gave us a chance to sort of, in my case personally, is sort of reflect on all that I had learned from her, and then watching as this campaign, national campaign, is there. All of us has said at one point or another, that is classic textbook Susie Wiles.
Yeah, towards the end of the interview, I asked the question of Krause, and I referenced it back to my father, who used to, when he got upset with me, he said, "Miller, what makes you tick?" And I asked him that question about Susie.
And what I guess I hope the takeaway would be is that readers would come away from that story thinking of her a little bit more as a full person, as we all are, right? Rather than simply an enabler or a helper, a political advisor who's great or awful. She is, as we all are, a mixture of things for a mixture of reasons. And so I would hope the takeaway is a little bit more nuanced than we sometimes see in the current political and politics adjacent discourse.
Alan, did you read the article? Did anybody have a chance to read that article?
By Michael Krause?
Yeah.
Oh, I sure did.
What was your impression?
I was struck by some of the same things that you mentioned. I have no experience with Susie Wiles. We've never met. We've never had any dealings. I knew who she was, and I knew something about her citizenship in Jacksonville, her previous engagement with the civic life of this city and the life of the state of Florida. So I knew all of that, but I was surprised, as you guys mentioned, that she agreed to discuss what she's been working on with a journalist and did it in a way that, was seemingly candid. I didn't think that she said anything to that journalist that she didn't intend to say. And so
that's Susie.
So, but that was a great interview. That was a great Mike's on Mike podcast. And that'll be a valuable artifact for the future. It'll be more valuable, I think, for people who have read Krause's article.
Yeah, I think so too.
Well, I also as I said, 3.5 months from now, there's going to be an election. However the outcome of that is, and whether President Trump is reelected, is elected or not, there will be arguments written about Susie Wiles's role and her leadership role in that. And that comes back to your contemporary thing. And she's a part of our community.
Yeah.
And there are people who know her. Yeah. And it's going to be interesting. So one of our big things is after this campaign, if I've got any chips, I might say, would you come on the podcast?
Oh, gosh, would that be
fun?
Well,
you guys owe me big time.
Oh, that's okay. We'll actually buy your wine afterward.
That would be a good, whatever happens with the outcome of the election, though, I hope that Ms. Wiles will decide to return to Jacksonville, not just for the episode, but that she'll become a Jacksonville citizen.
She has a home here. Okay. Her two daughters are here. Her grandson is here. She has a home here.
Okay, that's great.
I'm going to be interested just to see what she ends up doing after this thing is over, whether he wins or loses. Yeah. I'd like to see what she's going to be doing next.
Well, it's history in the making.
Yeah, it will be. Somebody. It definitely will be. We had all, when we decided to put the show together, we all kind of talked about, let's get some favorite clips that we have from previous shows and put them into this program. And you've given us an idea, which I think would be a good one, which is for this one. On our website and on our Facebook page, we ought to put a link up to Krause's article that he did on Politico to remind folks to watch and to put it in context. Listening to this, we can put some context in it. So We'll go ahead and put the link to Michael Krause's Politico masterpiece on Susie Wiles after we upload this program. So that's going to be really, really good too. You were going to talk about the Jazz Festival. I kind of tipped it a little bit here earlier.
Well, I think it was episode 44. Wow. We talked about the origins of the Jacksonville Jazz Festival, and I can remember when we were getting to do this, our colleague here, our senior curmudgeon, Mike Tolbert is the creator of that, as Mike Miller said. And I don't think that Mike Miller and I realized how that was put together and the background and the roll of the dice, or whatever you want to call, of doing that. And hearing Mike share that story, which he taught and sort of helped us understand how you brought something that was an idea in his head and was able to leverage his friends and Mayor Godboll's friends and put together something that has now become a part of our community forever. As a matter of fact, I can remember going home, and this, I think I shared it with my two other Mikes, is I went home and was telling my wife about, we're doing this podcast on the Jazz Festival, and my wife Sue said, "Oh, I was there. I was in a lawn chair." And I went, "Oh, I didn't know that." And she went, "Yeah, because I was, traveling, I think, or wherever it was, I wasn't home." And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, where was she?" She said, "We went early." She went with a friend of her, a teacher friend. And she said, "We were right up front in lawn chair." She said, "It took us a while to get home, but we didn't have anything to do, and we sat up front." And I went, "I didn't know that." But that episode, which I think we're going to show parts of, was extraordinary. And to this day, Mike, what year are we now in the Jazz Festival? At this
44? I think we just did 44, didn't we?
Yeah. And it is now, it's part of the fabric. It's just fabric of the city. But it's also just part of the history of music. It's the history of heritage of music. And it was here in Jacksonville. I don't know why. You should be talking about that. You're the one that did it.
Well, first of all, let's go back and listen to what Mike did say on the podcast.
Well, here's what he listed.
All right, go ahead. Say it out.
It's your
Mike asked me the memories.
Yeah.
Going back. And I told him a couple of memories. And this is, I think this is some of what I said. For that first festival, it obviously starts with Della Reese. By the time Della Reese came in around 8 o'clock or whatever, the crowd was as big as it was going to get. I mean, it was huge. And they knew that Della Reese was coming next. And they started chanting, "Della, Della, Della, Della." And I'm sure we could have heard it in Jacksonville Beach. It was so loud. So to get to the stage, she had to walk through the crowd. So you watch the crowd part. You watch that crowd part as she walked between them, yelling, "Della, Della, Della." And then her performance was just out of sight. It was unbelievable. And I remember sitting there. I'd probably had something to smoke, but I remember sitting there that night, and the breeze was blowing. I watched the breeze, and I watched some shrimp boats go up and down, and I'm thinking, this is as good as heaven right here, man. It ain't going to get no better than this.
Okay, Mike, beside what we've just seen, is there some other memories that you could share with us?
Obviously, there are a ton. One of my favorites is from the second year. It rained like hell late in the day on the second year, so we had to call off the festival for the rest of the night. And two guests that had not performed, waiting to perform, were Buddy Rich and his band, and Della Reese and her group. And Buddy was going on first, and then she was going to play with them, sing with them. And we had to cancel their acts. And the people wouldn't go home. They would not leave, and they were yelling, "Della, Della, Della." And so I'm in the back of the police car, and they hand me the microphone and say, "Tell these people to get out of here." So I asked them to please go home. Well, when it got after they started leaving, we had to get Rich and Della out of Mayport back downtown. Well, you can imagine the chaos with all the traffic and the rain and everything. And so I told them, I said, "Just follow this red truck." So I got a recreation worker named Red who drove a red truck. And I said, "Have you got a wire cut or something you can cut a chain link playing with?" He said, "Sure I do." So we're in the rain now. We go to the Mayport gate. He gets out. I said, "That's it." He gets out and he cuts that chain off, takes it off the gate, pops open the gate, gets in his truck, and takes off, and they're behind us. So they escaped.
On Mayport property.
On Mayport, on there, yes, in the runway. God, you couldn't do that. If you did that today, you guys would get shot before you ever could. Homeland Security would be on your back. Oh, my goodness. So that's one. There are a lot more like that, but that's one particularly.
There may be a book there. You know that? There could be a book there.
Yeah, maybe a movie.
Yeah. We can do it again like I tried to do last week on Netflix. That's tremendous stuff. Let's talk about next year. What would you guys like to see us do? What haven't we done that you would like to see us do? And I know we didn't rehearse this, and I didn't set this question up for anybody, but I'm interested in knowing, and our producer, Scott Westerman, I'm sure is going to be interested in wanting to know, what do we want to do next?
I think I'd like to just improve on the quality, keep having fun like we've been having, make sure we get the right kind of guests to talk about the right subjects, people who will challenge us and we can challenge back. Despite some trepidations, I'd like to be able to say what I got on my mind.
We can change the tagline. Gosh, you haven't done that?
Really? No, not, even though I've been accused.
We see a different podcast than we are part of the issue.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Sponsor, what would you like to see?
Yeah,
Mike says, like in the future.
You've touched on some great Jacksonville stories in the course of this last year of programming. I'd love to see you pick up where some of those stories have at least paused, not ended, but where they have at least reached a shift of gears and inflection point. One of the interesting stories of Jacksonville's civic life over this past several years has been that of its municipally owned utility, JEA, and that's a story that I think is still in play.
I do too.
And you brought that up to date most recently with the resignation of Jay Stowe, Aaron Zahn's successor, and a little bit of mystery around that event, and you speculated about that. So
that wasn't speculation.
I'd pick that up when the opportunity presents itself, or at least let's not lose sight of that. Let's not lose sight of some of the other developing stories. This is 2024, as Mike Hightower pointed out. We're now, 110, 118, some 120 some odd days out from a national election. We've got some other election activity going on, so that's going to be enough to keep everybody busy here for the foreseeable future. We've got an evolving set of developments with public and private education here.
That's what I was going to go.
That's a lively topic. There's just been a shift in leadership in
new superintendent
administration with the Duval County Public Schools.
And a new school board will be coming on, too, because we have elections.
That's right.
School board.
Yep. So wholesale leadership change at that level in an environment where people really see public education as being challenged by a lot of different factors, and private education trying to meet the market. I think there are a lot of stories to be told there. Resilience, adaptation to sea level rise, that's a story that's been going on for some time. I don't know that you have had a guest yet on this, but that might not be a bad one to try to program in, and maybe a panel on that, right? Because there are a lot of different perspectives on that, and Jacksonville being a Navy town, and as well as a coastal city, a seaport, a river port, really a place that's sensitive to that. There's no shortage of ideas.
Yeah, and as you were saying, yeah, thank you. And I was just thinking we got just embarked, or the mayor and the Jaguars, on a $1.4 billion investment, the largest investment ever in the history of Jacksonville. So that is going to be a 2 or 3 year evolution. Mm-hmm. There's still parts of that agreement that still need to be worked out, but there's already $1.4 billion investment. We've already talked a little bit, as you talk about things that are coming up. We hear this, that they talked about $1 billion new jail.
Yes.
That's on the horizon. There's the issue of the concern that we just read about in today's paper about problems with healthcare and deaths at the present jail. We've got downtown parks that are going to be coming out of the ground pretty soon. So to your point, Alan, there are going to be a lot of things going on that's going to change, one, not only how Jacksonville looks, but how people think about paying for those big ticket items. And, one of us that we've all talked about, Jacksonville sometimes in the past has always tried to do it on the cheap. We wanted an enhanced quality of life, but we weren't willing to pay for it. Well, we've got some big ticket items, and now we're there, and how are we going to do that, and how are we going to balance that? And the other thing I think is which I think is going to be interesting to see how all this evolves, is that you have with the election coming up, but you've got a Democratic mayor who has pulled off some incredible successes with a Republican city council and in a red city, and how she is going to continue to be successful. And we're going to have those elections. So I think, as you said, we're going to have an evolving opportunity to have people and be able to discuss that. And thanks to y'all, we'll be able to do that.
Yep. There's a lot in what you just said, Mike Hightower, about the stories that are coming up and the ways that Mike's on Mike can address them. We have a lively fourth estate in Duval County. It's much more diverse. It's much more segmented than it was in the days of traditional print and broadcast media. So it's a lot more divided. But the kind of coverage that we see in this segmented media is driven by, in a lot of cases, people who are not what we would call long-term veterans of local public life and the local news scene. So we've got another story. We've got a retiring corps of experienced journalists who are moving on, and the next generation of journalists moving in behind them, people who are early to maybe at the most mid-career professionals. The stories that we're talking about that you guys, and you are guys, that you are covering with your interviewees, you cover those with a greater depth of historic memory and a sense of sort of the backstory to that. You just made a comment about the appropriation, the contract for the new stadium, how that's the biggest single capital investment in Jacksonville's history. That's noteworthy. And you talk about incidents, you talk about things like the jail project. That's a story with a history, right? Where all of these things really, to a historian, it's instinctively true. There is a legacy and a story and kind of a backstory and a past to all of these things that are our issues to deal with in the contemporary moment. I think that's one of the gifts that Mike's on Mike brings to these stories and the storytelling that you're working on. You can do things that contemporary journalists just don't have the time, the resources, or maybe the institutional memory to do.
I was thinking, as you were thinking, that I think that hopefully there will be guests out there that will want to come in there that we can ask the questions or tee them up. But I think they're out there. I think the opportunity that we're going to have in partnering with you, but the three of us, is the opportunity, as you say, these big ticket items. I go back to my buddy here, Mike Tolbert, when he and Jake were there. I mean, that was a big deal when Jake put together the business community and put together a $1 billion decade. And we're just talking about one issue here that's $1 billion. Then you got the jail coming up, and we haven't even talked about the CBA.
Yep.
And then we're talking about the parks downtown, and we've heard about the trio, the historical percent. I mean, we started ending this up, or was it, as Chico said, at some point, $1 billion here, $1 billion there, we're going to talk a lot of money. I mean, when you kind of look at that, gentlemen, I mean, there is, coming down the road, there is an opportunity for Jacksonville to move into a new tier. But if we want to do that, then it's going to cost. And are we willing to do that and feel good about it? Or are we going to be dragged into those new opportunities? Mm-hmm. But the future is coming. Yeah. And it's really kind of, there's a challenge, but it's kind of, for some of us who have been around forever, it's going to be a neat time to watch this happen. And I think with the new generation of young people and the people who are moving here, I think they're going to demand from their elected officials and those decision makers, if you want me to stay here, then I'll help you make that investment, but you need to step up as a decision maker and make this a place that I want to stay here, I want to invest here and raise a family here.
Those young people are more likely to be receptive to that invitation and to say what you're saying if they know something about how Jacksonville got to the position it's in right now. Right. Yep. Tomorrow evening, I'm going to be speaking at a Jacks Chamber group called Next Up Jacks. It is a young professional organization, and it's rising early to mid-career people who are interested in the civic life of the city, and my job is to tell them something about how the city got to be what it is, and to engage them in this idea that knowing something about it is going to make them more invested.
I'll tell you one other show that I want to do next year, and I don't know if he's going to like doing this or not, but this fellow here started the Emerging Leaders program with the Chamber of Commerce, and it's been extremely successful.
Hightower Emerging Leaders.
That's right. And at some point, when he's willing to actually talk about what goes on behind those closed doors that he won't even let me in to see, I'd like to have him on to talk about the people who've gone through there, what they're thinking, what they want. I think that'd make a great hour. I hope they could do it.
Well, let me put this. Let me put this in two things. Number one, the group that you're talking about is the group that is below the Emerging Leaders. Emerging Leaders program came out of the program that you're doing. This is the group that is above that, but they are connected.
Did that originate during your leadership?
Yeah, it was a mentoring program, and then the chamber was nice enough to name it. And by the way, we were in Class 8, which is it was pretty cool.
I got to wrap it up. Let me just take a moment to, again, publicly thank these two guys, because there would be no Mics on Mike if it weren't for Hightower and for Tolbert. When we came up with this concept, and I'm talking to myself and other close friends that I have about it and whether or not to do it, and we were kind of putting together what the format would be. I said there are only two people I know in this town who would be able to address those things that I have in my mind that I would like this kind of a podcast to address. So my deepest gratitude for our friendship and for the year that you spent together with all of us to do this, and to you, Alan, Bliss. Obviously, the only way that we can keep the lights on and the cameras rolling is because of the help that we're getting from the Historical Society and the donors who all wanted their donations to help support this. Yes. Thank you all.
Well, I echo that gratitude. As I said at the outset of this recording session here today, it's an honor to be engaged with this. It's high value. It's a gift to the future.
Thank you. These two guys have been a gift to me.
It's a team effort, Mr. It's a team effort. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all. And thank you for hosting us at the Historical Society's in the center. Thank you. We will be. Thank you all for joining us, and catch us on your favorite podcast platform. And next week, there'll be another show. We are going to put up that link, by the way, to Michael Kruse's article on Politico. So you'll have a chance to review that. And if you get a chance, take a look at episode 44. You'll find it on YouTube as well as on our Facebook page. Thanks for joining us. Have a good week, everybody, and we'll see you again.
Y'all take care. Bye.
Mics on Mike with Mike Tolbert, Mike Hightower, and Mike Miller can be found on your favorite podcasting platform, Facebook, and YouTube. Visit the website at micsonmike.com. Join us next time for more conversation with Mics on Mike.